What if the greatest secret in Christian history isn't what's written in the Bible, but what's left out? For nearly 2,000 years, the world has gazed at the figure of Jesus, teacher, healer, revolutionary. Yet the story most people know is like a tapestry with a gaping hole at its center. Between the moment when a precocious 12-year-old astonished the elders in the temple and the day a 30-year-old man strode into the Jordan to be baptized, the Gospels fall silent. 18 years vanished. Where did he go? What did he learn? And why, above all, did the early church choose to keep those years cloaked in silence? Imagine for a moment that the answers to these questions are not just lost to history, but deliberately hidden, locked away, not in dusty libraries, but in the very fabric of the Christian story. This is not a conspiracy of men in shadowy chambers, but a mystery woven into the soul of faith itself. The Gnostic tradition, long dismissed as heresy, whispers that the missing years of Jesus are the key to understanding not only his message, but the true nature of the divine spark within us all. In the world of the Gnostics, knowledge, gnosis, is not merely information but transformation. It is the secret wisdom that awakens the soul from its slumber, that reveals the kingdom of God not as a distant paradise, but as a reality hidden within. The Gnostics believed that Jesus was not simply a teacher of morals, but a revealer of mysteries, a guide through the labyrinth of existence. And they insisted that the greatest of these mysteries was never meant for the masses, but for those with ears to hear and eyes to see. To understand the magnitude of what may have been hidden, we must first step back into the world Jesus was born into, a world brimming with spiritual ferment where ancient traditions collided and intermingled in the crossroads of the Roman Empire. Galilee and Judea were not isolated backwaters, but vibrant melting pots where Greek philosophy, Persian mysticism, Egyptian rites, and Jewish prophecy all jostled for influence. The air was thick with expectation, with rumors of messiahs and secret teachers, with longing for liberation, not just from Roman rule, but from the bondage of the material world itself. In this world, the child Jesus would have been surrounded by stories of prophets who vanished into the desert and returned transformed, of sages who journeyed to distant lands in search of wisdom. The Hebrew scriptures themselves are filled with such tales: Moses in Midian, Elijah in the wilderness, Joseph in Egypt. Is it so strange, then, to imagine that Jesus too embarked on a journey, one not just of geography, but of the soul? The Gnostic texts, unearthed from the sands of Nag Hammadi after centuries of suppression, paint a picture of Jesus that is at once familiar and utterly alien. Here, he is not merely the gentle shepherd or the suffering servant, but the Logos, the living word, the embodiment of divine wisdom. He is a master of riddles and parables, a challenger of orthodoxy, a bringer of secret sayings that confound the literal-minded and awaken the seeker. In the Gospel of Thomas, he declares, "Whoever finds the interpretation of these sayings will not experience death." What could this mean, if not that the true message of Jesus is hidden in plain sight, waiting to be unlocked by those willing to look deeper? But if Jesus was a seeker of wisdom, where did he seek it? Here, the silence of the canonical Gospels becomes a canvas for the imagination and for the suppressed traditions that have survived on the fringes of Christian memory. Some say he traveled to Egypt, the land of ancient mysteries, where the priests of Isis and Osiris guarded the secrets of life and death. Others whisper of journeys further east, to Persia or even India, where Buddhist and Hindu sages taught the art of liberation from the cycle of suffering. Still others point to the Essenes, a mystical Jewish sect living on the shores of the Dead Sea, whose writings speak of a teacher of righteousness and a hidden community devoted to purity and inner illumination. What unites these diverse traditions is the conviction that Jesus' missing years were not years of obscurity, but of preparation, years in which he encountered teachings and practices that transformed him from a child of promise into a vessel of revelation. The Gnostic vision suggests that he did not simply receive a divine commission in a single moment, but underwent a gradual awakening, a process of initiation into the mysteries of existence. It is a story not of passive waiting, but of active seeking, a journey that mirrors the path every soul must walk if it is to awaken to its true nature. Yet this is precisely the story that the early church sought to suppress. The Church Fathers, anxious to establish a unified doctrine and a clear authority, declared the Gnostic writings heretical, their teachings dangerous. They insisted that salvation came not through secret knowledge, but through faith and obedience. The missing years of Jesus became an embarrassment, a void to be filled with pious speculation or ignored altogether. The Gnostic Gospels were hidden, burned, or buried, their voices silenced for centuries. But silence is not the same as absence. The questions remain, insistent as ever. What did Jesus learn in those hidden years? What truths did he discover, and why were they deemed too dangerous for the world to know? If the kingdom of God is truly within, as the Gnostic Jesus proclaimed, what does that mean for us, here, now, in a world still hungry for meaning? As we begin this journey into the heart of the mystery, let us set aside our assumptions and open ourselves to the possibility that the greatest story ever told is also the greatest secret ever kept. The missing years of Jesus are not merely a historical curiosity, but an invitation, a call to seek, to question, to awaken. For in the silence between the lines, in the shadows of forgotten texts, the true light may yet be found. And so the stage is set. The silence of the Gospels is not an empty void, but a doorway. On the other side lies a world of hidden wisdom, forbidden knowledge, and the promise of transformation. As we step through that doorway, we begin to glimpse the contours of a Jesus who is not just a figure of history, but a living guide for the soul's journey. The mystery deepens, and the search for answers leads us ever onward into the very heart of gnosis. There is a kind of silence that speaks louder than words, a silence that hints at secrets too profound, too transformative to be uttered openly. The missing years of Jesus are precisely this kind of silence, and within it the Gnostics heard a call to seek the hidden, to question the surface, to awaken to the mysteries beneath. For them, Jesus was not simply a preacher or a prophet, but a seeker, a soul on a journey, just as we are, yearning for the light behind the veil. Who was Jesus truly during those silent years? Imagine a young man, restless and curious, his heart burning with questions that the world around him could not answer. The Gnostic tradition invites us to see him not as a passive recipient of divine favor, but as a spiritual apprentice, one who sought wisdom wherever it might be found, who listened to the whispers of the wind and the teachings of sages, who looked not only to the heavens, but into the depths of his own soul. In this vision, Jesus is a mystic in the making. He walks the dusty roads of Galilee, but his mind travels further still, into the realms of spirit, into the mysteries of existence. He is drawn to the Essenes, those enigmatic keepers of secret rites by the Dead Sea, whose scrolls speak of inner purification, of the battle between light and darkness within every heart. Perhaps he studies with them, learns their prayers, their meditations, their hope for a new world born from inner transformation. Or perhaps his journey takes him further, as some ancient traditions claim, to Egypt, land of the pyramids and the Sphinx, where the priests guard the knowledge of life, death, and rebirth. Here the young seeker might have encountered the wisdom of Isis and Osiris, the rituals of resurrection, the idea that the soul is immortal and divine. The Gnostic Jesus absorbs these mysteries, weaving them into the fabric of his own awakening. The Gnostic texts themselves, long hidden and only recently brought back into the light, offer tantalizing glimpses of this inner journey. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus does not command blind faith. Instead, he challenges his followers. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. This is not the voice of a distant king, but of a fellow traveler, urging us to seek the truth within ourselves. To the Gnostics, Jesus' greatest teaching was not about obedience to law or ritual, but about gnosis, direct, personal knowledge of the divine. He was a revealer, not a gatekeeper, a guide, not a judge. He taught in riddles and parables, not to obscure the truth, but to draw the seeker deeper, to awaken the spark of curiosity and wonder. The kingdom of God, he insisted, is not a place to be found in the world, but a reality to be discovered within. The kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will realize that you are the children of the living Father. This was a radical message, one that threatened the very foundations of religious authority. For if the divine is within, who needs priests or temples? If salvation is a matter of awakening, not obedience, then every soul is free to seek, to question, to discover. The Gnostic Jesus was a liberator, not just from sin or suffering, but from ignorance and fear. He invited his followers to become, as he was, children of light, beings who remember their true origin and destiny. But this message was not without its dangers. The path of gnosis is not easy. It demands courage, honesty, and a willingness to face the darkness within. The Gnostic texts speak often of the struggle between light and shadow, between the divine spark and the forces that seek to keep it imprisoned. In the Gospel of Philip we read, "Ignorance is the mother of all evil." Ignorance will result in death, because those who come from ignorance neither were, nor are, nor shall be. For the Gnostics, the greatest sin was not disobedience, but forgetfulness, the loss of our true nature, the sleep of the soul. In this light, the missing years of Jesus become more than a historical puzzle. They are a symbol of the journey every seeker must undertake. The silence is not emptiness, but potential, a space in which the soul can grow, learn, and awaken. The Gnostic Jesus is our companion on this journey, not a distant idol, but a living presence, urging us to remember who we truly are. And yet, this vision of Jesus stands in stark contrast to the one embraced by the early church. The Gnostics were branded as heretics, their writings condemned and destroyed, their voices silenced. The official story became one of authority and obedience, of miracles and dogmas, of a Jesus whose divinity was unquestionable and whose humanity was carefully controlled. But the Gnostic tradition persisted, like a hidden stream flowing beneath the surface of history, nourishing those who dared to seek the truth for themselves. As we follow the path of the Gnostic Jesus, we begin to see the missing years not as a void, but as a crucible, a time of transformation, of seeking and finding, of becoming. The journey is not just his, but ours. The questions he asked are the questions we must ask. The wisdom he found is the wisdom we are invited to discover. The silence of the missing years beckons us onward, deeper into the mystery. What did Jesus learn in those hidden places? What secrets did he uncover, and how did they shape the message he would one day proclaim to the world? The answers, the Gnostics tell us, are not just in ancient texts or distant lands, but in the depths of our own hearts. And so, the story continues, into the realm of hidden knowledge, forbidden texts, and the eternal quest for the light within. The deeper we journey into the shadows of history, the more the silence surrounding Jesus' missing years begins to hum with possibility. For the Gnostics, this silence was not a void, but a vault, a treasury of secret wisdom, waiting for those bold enough to seek it. And as the centuries passed, Whispers of forbidden knowledge and lost teachings began to surface, carried by winds that refused to be stilled. Imagine the world in which young Jesus moved. A world alive with stories, symbols, and secrets. The air was thick with questions. What is the true nature of God? Why does suffering exist? How can the soul be set free? In the villages and marketplaces, in the caves of mystics and the libraries of sages, answers were offered in riddles, in parables, in the language of myth. It was a world where truth was rarely handed down in plain speech, but hidden in the folds of stories encoded in symbols, and guarded by those who understood that the greatest treasures are not for the careless or the unready. The Gnostic tradition flourished in this atmosphere of mystery. Its teachers claimed that Jesus himself had been a master of hidden wisdom, a revealer of secrets, not just to the crowds, but to those who dared to follow him beyond the surface. The Gospels we know today, shaped by the hands of the early church, give us only glimpses of this side of Jesus. But the Gnostic texts, unearthed from the sands of Nag Hammadi in the 20th century, crack open the door to a world where the boundaries between the human and the divine are not walls, but windows. In these lost writings, Jesus speaks not as a distant king, but as a fellow seeker. The Gospel of Thomas, perhaps the most famous of the Gnostic Gospels, is a collection of sayings, some familiar, others strange and unsettling. Split a piece of wood, and I am there. Lift up the stone, and you will find me there. Here, Jesus is not confined to a single place or time, but present in all things, waiting to be discovered by those who know how to look. The Gospel of Mary, another forbidden text, gives Mary Magdalene a voice as a disciple and confidant, entrusted with teachings the others could not grasp. In these pages, the drama of faith is not about obedience, but about awakening, about the courage to seek, to question, to know. But the Gnostic vision goes even further, challenging the very foundations of the world as most people understand it. In the Gnostic cosmology, the material world is not the perfect creation of a benevolent God, but the work of a lesser being, a demiurge, ignorant of the true source of light. The soul, they taught, is a spark of the divine, trapped in the prison of flesh and forgetfulness. Salvation is not about appeasing an angry deity, but about remembering who we truly are, about breaking the chains of ignorance and returning to the fullness of the light. This radical message was encoded in stories and symbols that, to the uninitiated, seem bizarre or even blasphemous. The serpent in Eden, for example, was not a villain, but a bringer of wisdom, an agent of awakening. Sophia, the divine wisdom, was both a guide and a tragic figure, whose fall into the world of matter mirrored the journey of every soul. These were not just theological ideas, but living myths, maps for the journey of the spirit, invitations to seek the hidden truth behind the world's illusions. The early church, seeking unity and authority, saw in these teachings a threat that could not be tolerated. Councils were convened, creeds were written, and the boundaries of orthodoxy were drawn with a heavy hand. The Gnostic texts were banned, their followers branded as heretics and driven underground. Some of these texts were destroyed, others hidden away in jars and caves, waiting for a future generation to rediscover them. Yet the hunger for hidden knowledge could not be extinguished. Stories of Jesus' missing years persisted, passed down in secret or disguised as legend. Some claimed he traveled to India, learning from Buddhist monks and Hindu sages. Others insisted he studied with the Magi in Persia or with the priests of Egypt. The infancy Gospels, dismissed by the church as fanciful, told of a child Jesus performing miracles, confounding teachers, and revealing glimpses of a wisdom far beyond his years. These stories, though often fantastic, point to a deep longing, a sense that the official story is incomplete, that something vital has been left unsaid. What if the missing years of Jesus were a time of apprenticeship, a period in which he sought out the wisdom of many traditions, weaving them into a tapestry of revelation? What if the teachings he later shared were not the product of a single culture or creed, but the fruit of a journey that crossed boundaries and broke down walls? The Gnostic Jesus is not a figure of dogma, but of discovery, a guide who invites us to seek the truth wherever it may be found, even if it leads us beyond the familiar and the safe. The rediscovery of the Gnostic texts in the modern era has reignited these questions, challenging us to look again at the story we thought we knew. In their pages, we find a Jesus who is both deeply human and profoundly divine, a teacher who does not demand belief but invites awakening. The forbidden knowledge he offers is not a set of doctrines, but a path, a way of seeing, of being, that transforms the seeker from within. As we stand at the threshold of this hidden world, we are faced with a choice. Will we cling to the safety of the known, or will we dare to step into the mystery? The forbidden texts beckon us onward, promising that the answers we seek are not just in ancient manuscripts, but in the depths of our own souls. The journey continues, and with every step, the silence of the missing years grows louder, calling us to remember, to awaken, to seek the light that has always been waiting just beyond the edge of what we have been told. The story is far from over. Ahead lies the heart of the mystery, the inner revolution that changed not only Jesus, but the very meaning of what it is to be human. There are moments in every seeker's journey when the world as it is cracks open and something astonishing shines through. For the Gnostics, the missing years of Jesus were not a void to be filled with idle speculation, but the crucible in which the greatest transformation took place, a revolution not of swords or politics, but of the soul. What did Jesus truly learn in those hidden years? What was the secret he carried back with him, a secret so powerful that it could threaten the very foundations of the world as it was known? To glimpse this, we must step beyond the boundaries of Orthodox tradition and enter the realm where Jesus is not just the Son of God, but the archetypal seeker, the one who dares to descend into the depths of matter and rise again, bearing the light of truth. The Gnostic vision is clear. Jesus' journey was not simply about fulfilling prophecy or obeying law. It was about awakening, about discovering, through lived experience, the divine spark buried in every human heart. Imagine Jesus, shaped by years of seeking, returning from his hidden wanderings, not as a mere carpenter, but as a man transformed. He has seen the world's suffering and its beauty, its illusions and its hidden realities. He has sat with sages in the desert, meditated with mystics by the Nile, perhaps even debated with philosophers in distant lands. But the greatest revelation was not found in any scroll or temple. It was found within. The Gnostic texts echo with this discovery. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus proclaims, "The kingdom of God is inside you and it is outside you." When you come to know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will realize that you are the children of the living Father. This is not the voice of a distant deity, but of a guide who has walked the path himself, who has faced the darkness within and emerged into the light. This inner revolution is the heart of the Gnostic gospel. The world, according to Gnostic cosmology, is a place of forgetfulness, ruled by powers that would keep us asleep. The demiurge, the blind creator, weaves a web of illusion, convincing souls that they are powerless, separate, alone. But Jesus, in the Gnostic telling, comes not to reinforce this illusion, but to shatter it. He is the revealer, the one who remembers the truth and calls others to do the same. What did he learn in those missing years? The answer, whispered through the ages, is that the greatest prison is ignorance, and the greatest liberation is gnosis, knowledge of the divine within. The rituals and laws of religion, the boundaries of tribe and nation, the chains of guilt and fear, all these are revealed as shadows compared to the blazing reality of the soul's true nature. Salvation is not a reward for obedience, but the awakening from a dream. This is a message that overturns the tables of the world. If the kingdom is within, then no priest or ruler can stand between the soul and its source. If the divine spark is in every heart, then every person is sacred, every life a miracle. The Gnostic Jesus teaches that the path to God is not through external authority, but through inner transformation, a journey of remembrance, of stripping away the layers of illusion until only the light remains. But this teaching is not without its dangers. The path of gnosis is not for the faint of heart. It demands courage, the willingness to question everything, to face the shadows within, to risk being misunderstood or rejected. It is a path that leads not to comfort, but to freedom, a freedom that can feel at times like exile. The early church, seeking order and unity, saw in this message a threat that could not be tolerated. The Gnostic Gospels were hidden, their followers persecuted, their wisdom scattered like seeds on the wind. Yet the seeds endured. In every age there have been those who heard the call, who glimpsed in moments of silence or wonder the truth that Jesus discovered in his missing years. The mystics and poets, the rebels and dreamers, all have carried forward the torch of gnosis, lighting the way for others to follow. And so the inner revolution continues. The missing years of Jesus are not just a chapter in an ancient story, but an invitation to every soul. What did Jesus learn? He learned that the kingdom is here, now, within. He learned that the path to God is the path of awakening, of remembering, of becoming who we truly are. He learned that the greatest miracle is not walking on water or raising the dead, but opening the eyes of the heart. As we stand on the threshold of this revelation, we are faced with a choice. Will we remain in the comfort of what we have been told, or will we dare to seek the truth for ourselves? The journey is not easy, but the reward is nothing less than the rediscovery of our own divinity. The story is nearing its climax. The silence of the missing years is about to break, revealing not just the secret of Jesus, but the secret of us all. The final revelation awaits, a truth that has the power to transform not only our understanding of history, but the very way we live and love and seek. The journey is not over. The greatest secret is yet to be revealed. There are moments when history itself seems to hold its breath, when the veils between past and present, myth and memory grow thin. The missing years of Jesus, so long shrouded in silence, now stand before us, not as a riddle to be solved, but as a revelation to be lived. For the Gnostics, the secret Jesus uncovered was not meant to be locked away in ancient texts or guarded by a chosen few. It was a living invitation, a call to every soul. Awaken, remember, become. The Gnostic vision of Jesus is not a relic of a lost age, but a living current, pulsing beneath the surface of history. He is the revealer, the awakener, the one who dares to say that the spark of the divine is not the privilege of priests or prophets, but the birthright of all. In the aftermath of his inner revolution, Jesus emerges not as a distant king or a flawless idol, but as a guide, one who has walked the path of seeking, who knows the cost of awakening, and who offers his hand to those willing to follow. The Gnostic texts, long buried and nearly forgotten, echo with this invitation. In the Gospel of Philip we read, "You saw the Spirit, you became Spirit. You saw Christ, you became Christ. You saw the Father, you shall become the Father." The boundaries between human and divine, teacher and student, dissolve. The miracle is not that Jesus was different from us, but that he was the first to remember what we have all forgotten. This is the revelation that threatened the world of order and authority. For if every soul is a spark of the infinite, who can claim the right to rule? If the kingdom is within, what need have we of temples built of stone? The early church, faced with the wild freedom of gnosis, chose instead the safety of dogma. The Gnostic Gospels were hidden, their followers hunted, their wisdom scattered to the winds. Yet like seeds falling on fertile ground, the truth endured, waiting for a season when it could blossom anew. The aftermath of this revelation is not a tidy ending, but a new beginning. The Gnostic Jesus does not offer easy answers or comforting certainties. He offers a path, a way of seeing, a way of being that transforms the seeker from within. The journey is not without peril. The world resists those who remember who they are. But the reward is freedom, the freedom to live as children of light, to see the world not as a prison, but as a place of possibility. The echoes of this message can be heard across the centuries, in the words of mystics and poets, in the quiet courage of those who seek the truth for themselves. It is a message that cannot be silenced, because it is written not in ink or stone, but in the very fabric of the soul. The missing years of Jesus are not just a chapter in a forgotten gospel. They are the story of every seeker who has ever longed for the light. And so, as the dust of history settles, a question remains, one that cannot be answered by scholars or priests, but only by each of us, in the silence of our own hearts. If the kingdom is truly within, what will you find when you look inside? The story lingers, unresolved, like a melody that haunts the edge of memory. The Gnostic Jesus stands at the threshold, not as a judge, but as a companion, inviting us to step beyond the boundaries of what we have been told, to seek the truth that waits in the hidden places, to become at last what we were always meant to be. Perhaps this is the greatest secret of all, that the missing years of Jesus are not missing at all. They are alive, here, now, in every moment of seeking, in every act of awakening, in every soul that dares to remember. The journey continues, and the light once kindled can never be extinguished. What will you do with this secret? The answer, as always, is yours to discover.